Have you ever wondered why some friendships end up in betrayal while some enemies surprisingly become our allies? It's a fascinating question, isn't it? We're about to embark on a journey that explores the intricate dynamics of trust, friendship, and the unexpected role of our so-called enemies. Today, we're diving into the second law of the renowned 48 Laws of Power. This particular law implores us to never put too much trust in friends, learn how to use enemies. It's a law that may seem controversial, and it's certainly thought-provoking. We'll be dissecting this law, understanding its implications, and unraveling how it plays out in real-life scenarios. We'll also look at practical ways to apply this law in our daily lives. Our exploration promises to be enlightening, challenging, and potentially transformative. So if you're ready to uncover the mystery behind this intriguing law, let's delve deeper. So, what does this law mean? Never put too much trust in friends, learn how to use enemies. It might sound a bit counterintuitive, right? We're often taught to trust our friends unconditionally and to keep our enemies at bay. But this law challenges that conventional wisdom and nudges us to think a bit differently. Let's dissect this law piece by piece. The first part advises, never put too much trust in friends. Now, it's not suggesting that we should distrust our friends or become paranoid. Instead, it's cautioning against complacency and unpreparedness that can stem from over-reliance on friends. When we put too much trust in friends, we expose ourselves to potential betrayals or disappointments. Friends, being privy to our strengths and weaknesses, can unintentionally or intentionally exploit this knowledge. It's not about doubting the intentions of our friends, but about understanding human nature. We're all susceptible to self-interest, and even the closest of friends can falter under certain circumstances. The second part of the law is equally intriguing. Learn how to use enemies. Now, this doesn't mean we should start creating enemies or engage in malicious activities. Rather, it suggests a calculated approach towards those who oppose us. Enemies, or let's say adversaries, are often more predictable than friends. They operate from a position of self-interest, and their actions are usually driven by competition or rivalry. This predictability can be harnessed to our advantage. For instance, if we know an adversary is constantly trying to outperform us, we can use this competitive spirit to push ourselves to new heights. Or, if we understand the tactics an enemy uses to undermine us, we can prepare and counteract effectively. Moreover, enemies can provide us with a different perspective. They might see our flaws and weaknesses that friends, out of politeness or fear of hurting our feelings, might not point out. Acknowledging these criticisms can help us grow and improve. Interestingly, sometimes, our enemies can turn into our most loyal allies. When we treat them with respect and fairness, we can transform the relationship from adversarial to cooperative. This is not about manipulation, but about understanding and leveraging dynamics of power and relationships. This law, in essence, encourages us to be vigilant and strategic in our relationships. It reminds us that power dynamics exist in all relationships, and understanding these dynamics can help us navigate life more effectively. So, it's not about distrusting friends or exploiting enemies, but about maintaining a balanced perspective. It's about understanding the potential pitfalls of over-reliance and the possible benefits of a well-calculated approach towards adversaries. Now that we understand the law, let's talk about its implications. You might be wondering, what are the implications of this law in our daily life? Well, let's dive in and explore how this law can impact various aspects of our lives, from personal relationships to professional interactions, and even political dynamics. On a personal level, this law reminds us to be cautious about placing too much trust in our friends. Now, this doesn't mean we should be suspicious of every friend we have. Instead, it's about understanding that friends, being human, are prone to emotions like envy and competition. These emotions can sometimes cloud their judgment, leading to actions that might not be in our best interest. So, it's always wise to maintain a degree of independence and not rely solely on our friends for support or advice. As we move into the professional realm, the implications of this law become even more pronounced. In the competitive world of business, friendships can sometimes blur the lines of professionalism. A friend might be less likely to give you critical feedback for fear of hurting your feelings. On the other hand, a so-called enemy, someone who isn't emotionally invested in you, might provide the honest, unbiased feedback that you need to grow and succeed. It's a delicate balance, but learning to use your enemies can be a powerful strategy for professional growth. In the political arena, this law takes on a whole new dimension. Politics is a game of power and alliances, where trust is a valuable commodity. Here, the law serves as a cautionary tale, reminding leaders to be wary of placing too much trust in their allies. As history has shown us, political friends can quickly turn into foes, driven by ambition and the pursuit of power. At the same time, former adversaries can become valuable allies, their opposition offering a fresh perspective and the potential for growth and change. But remember, this law isn't about breeding distrust or promoting animosity. It's about understanding human nature and the dynamics of power. It's about recognizing that our friends, with their emotional ties to us, may not always act in our best interest. And it's about acknowledging that our enemies, with their detachment, can sometimes offer us the most valuable insights. So as we navigate through life's complex web of relationships, it's essential to keep this law in mind. It encourages us to maintain a healthy balance of trust and skepticism, to value the insights of our enemies, and to understand the potential pitfalls of placing too much trust in our friends. With these implications in mind, we can see the relevance of this law in various aspects of our lives. It serves as a tool for navigating relationships, a guide for professional growth, and a reminder to leaders about the delicate dynamics of trust and power. It's time to take a look at some real-life examples of this law in action. Let's start with the world of politics, a realm that teems with stories exemplifying the second law of power. One of the most famous is the case of Julius Caesar and Brutus. Caesar, the ruler of Rome, put too much trust in his friend Brutus. This trust was misplaced as Brutus, together with other conspirators, stabbed Caesar in the back, both literally and figuratively. This historical event is a stark reminder: putting too much trust in friends can lead to your downfall. Moving over to the corporate world, let's consider the story of Apple Inc. Steve Jobs, one of the co-founders, was ousted from his own company in the mid-80s. Jobs had recruited John Sculley, a friend and former Pepsi executive, to be the CEO of Apple. But as the company faced financial difficulties, Sculley sided with the board and pushed Jobs out. Jobs learned the hard way that even friends can turn against you when their interests are threatened. Now let's flip the coin and see how using enemies can be beneficial. During the Second World War, the United States and the Soviet Union, despite their ideological differences, joined forces against a common enemy, Nazi Germany. Their alliance, albeit uneasy, was instrumental in ending the war. In this context, the law manifests in a different light. It shows that enemies can become valuable allies when circumstances demand. In the world of sports, we find another fascinating example. Take the story of two of the greatest tennis players of all time, Andre Agassi and Pete Sampras. Off the court, they were not the best of friends and their rivalry was well known. However, their competition pushed each other to improve, resulting in some of the most memorable matches in tennis history. It goes to show that a rivalry, or in other words, using your enemy, can spur you to achieve greater heights. In the realm of literature, we find yet another compelling case. The famous playwright William Shakespeare often used his rivals' criticisms to improve his work. One notable critic was Robert Greene, a contemporary playwright who publicly denounced Shakespeare's work. Instead of being disheartened, Shakespeare used Greene's criticisms to refine his craft, leading to some of his most celebrated works. This is a perfect example of how using your enemy can help you improve and succeed. In the world of technology, the rivalry between Microsoft and Apple illustrates this law. Bill Gates and Steve Jobs were fierce competitors, yet they recognized the value each brought to the industry. Their rivalry spurred innovation, leading to the development of groundbreaking technology that has shaped the world we know today. Lastly, let's consider a tale from the animal kingdom. The mongoose and the cobra are natural enemies. However, the mongoose uses the cobra for its survival. It has evolved to resist the cobra's venom, and the cobra is a significant part of its diet. This example, though not human, beautifully encapsulates the essence of the second law of power. Using your enemy can be a matter of survival. These examples clearly illustrate the power and potential consequences of this law. But how can we apply this law in our own lives? The key to incorporating Law 2 into your life is balance and discretion. It's about understanding human nature, not becoming cynical or distrusting of everyone around you. Start by observing. Watch the behavior of your friends and those you deem as enemies. Understand their motivations and actions. Remember, power is a game of observation. The more you see, the more you understand, and the better you can navigate the intricate web of human relationships. Next, refrain from relying too heavily on your friends. It's not about cutting ties or living in constant suspicion, but about maintaining a healthy level of independence. Be self-reliant. Make decisions on your own. And don't let your judgment be clouded by emotions or the fear of losing friendships. Equally important is to not underestimate your enemies. They can be your greatest teachers. They can show you where your blind spots are, where your defenses need to be stronger. So, instead of avoiding your enemies, engage with them. Learn from them. Use their opposition to your advantage. Now let's talk about managing enemies. It's not about making more enemies or fostering hatred. It's about transforming enmity into a beneficial relationship. Can you find common ground? Can you turn an adversary into an ally? It's a challenging task, but it's not impossible. History is filled with examples of adversaries becoming allies. Lastly, always remember that this law is not a prescription for mistrust and manipulation. It's a guide to help you understand the dynamics of power and relationships. It's about being aware, being strategic, and being wise. The application of Law 2 requires a balanced approach. It's a delicate dance between trust and caution, between friendship and rivalry. It's about understanding that power isn't just about strength but also about wisdom and strategy. By applying this law, you can navigate your relationships more wisely and strategically. Let's sum up what we've learned today. We've taken a deep dive into the second law of the 48 laws of power. Never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies. This law, like all the others, is not a commandment, but a tool for understanding the dynamics of power that shape our social and professional lives. We began by understanding the law itself. It advises us not to invest too much trust in friends, as they might be driven by emotions and personal interest which could cloud their judgment and potentially harm us. On the other hand, enemies are usually predictable and their motivations clear. This makes them valuable assets, if harnessed correctly. We then explored the implications of this law. It challenges us to be cautious, to scrutinize our relationships, and to be strategic in our interactions. It encourages us to understand the motivations of friends and enemies alike, and use that understanding to our advantage. We looked at numerous examples of the law in action, from historical figures to modern-day leaders. These examples highlighted how the law has been used, both successfully and unsuccessfully, demonstrating its effectiveness and potential pitfalls. Finally, we discussed how to apply this law in our daily lives. We learned that it doesn't mean fostering enmity or mistrust, but rather promoting a sense of caution and strategic thinking. It's about realizing that people are complex, driven by a multitude of factors, and that our interactions with them should reflect this complexity. In conclusion, the second law of power teaches us to be discerning in our relationships. It urges us to be strategic, to understand the motivations of others, and to use this understanding to navigate the often tricky waters of power dynamics. Remember, in the game of power, it's important to be vigilant and strategic. Never put too much trust in friends and learn how to use enemies. It's not about being cynical, it's about being wise.